don't know if I captured that very well, but there were two drivers flipping each other off because of they're arguing about who had the right of way to turn and stuff. I've never experienced anything like that with a drone flyer yet. People argue like, learn how to fly. Although there are stupid people, I've never met dumb drone flyers yet, aside from when I read the news stories. And I was checking the status of the DJI repair to see if anything actually moved, and surprisingly it did. I got an email first that said 10:36 a.m. The repair has been completed. Although it's kind of funny because we all know, like they said, they didn't actually repair it. So I guess it's just a template response. Then at 12:07 p.m. it says quality assurance. So I guess that means they tested it to make sure it works. And then 2:42 it says the product has been shipped, and it gave me a UPS label. Or rather the tracking ID. I tried to look it up and it didn't actually register, so I'm guessing because I looked it up too fast, but hopefully that's a good sign. It's kind of interesting to read all you guys' comments too on whether or not you think DJI did enough or not based on the circumstance. For me, it's just about right now, let's wait and see whether or not they actually give me a good one, because based on all the other horror stories, people get back crash drones and stuff like that, so we'll see. I did read this piece of news. It was about that one about the drone hitting the helicopter, the US military one, and they showed basically the arm of the Phantom, and it says they're investigating it, and they kind of showed what kind of a helicopter it was. So according to this, whatever this means, it's a UH-60 Blackhawk helicopter. It has top speeds of 175 miles per hour, has a crew of 3, and costs $5.9 million, and they can't comment about it until the investigation is done, apparently. Kind of makes me think in terms of things going this fast, like a lot of people say, if whether or not, like say a pilot or a helicopter can actually see a drone in general, which makes all the report sightings a little iffy when people say they see a drone, who knows? Since this was an arm of a Phantom though, I guess that got DJI to respond to it, and apparently they're helping with the investigation. And it says as well, they're currently not allowed to speak about the incident because it is a participant in the case. It says here, we have always instructed drone operators to obey the laws and regulations applicable to drones in their jurisdiction, and we urge our customers to fully educate themselves about how to fly safely. Millions of people safely use drones for personal and professional uses, and we hope they will join us in our commitment to ensuring drones remain a benefit to society. To me, that's kind of interesting when they say participant in a case, because it makes me think about that recent news of the private data mode and people being concerned of their privacy and all that when they're flying. It makes me wonder if them as a participant is they're going to go through all their logs to see if there were any phantoms, for example, flying in that area, so that they can identify the owners. Is that too far-fetched, or is that something they could do technically? For the drone regulations in Canada, one of you actually left an interesting comment after hearing the conference call video that I uploaded about the Transport Canada saying how recreational flyers should abide by this, the reason why they came up with it, and some of you, a lot of you obviously thought it's crazy in many ways compared to everything else. So one of you kind of left this interesting example about hang gliding and paragliding, how it's the least restricted, I guess, hobby in the sense of something in the sky. So I believe this is kind of like a club or an organization that promotes the hobby. And it says here, in this age of government regulations, it is significant that hang gliding and paragliding are the least regulated segments of aviation. This is due to the nature of these sports and the unrelenting efforts of the HPAC ACVL to keep these sports free of regulation. In Canada, hang gliders and paragliders are not required to be registered or to bear identification marks. There are no airworthiness standards or requirements imposed by the Canadian aviation regulations. The CARs do not impose any training requirements for hang gliders or paraglider pilots, and the regulations do not require these pilots to hold any pilot license or permit to operate their aircraft. There is, however, a requirement to obtain the HAGAR, whatever that is, annotation prior to piloting hang gliders and paragliders in controlled airspace. Most of the cards about airspace apply to hang gliders and paragliders. So it kind of makes you think, I guess for stuff like this, what do they do that's so different in terms of, I guess, getting Transport Canada to say, hey, get off my back, I guess with all this registration stuff, which if according to this, I don't know if it's still accurate because the date seems pretty old, like 2012, but it makes you wonder like why this is less restricted compared to someone flying a toy drone, for example, like 250 grams. This place is supposed to be a big deal. So out of curiosity, that made me want to just read a little bit more about the hobby. And then I read into this article, it said, paragliders dream of launch site at Hill 60 could boost tourism. That's a good point in many ways, where if you make hobbies like those really accessible and open to a lot of people, it should boost things like tourism. I think it's the same thing with the drones. But here it was kind of interesting because it says the sport evolved from mountaineers thinking if we had a parachute, we cut it a little differently, we could fly it. They really just didn't want to walk back down the mountains, he equipped. They then started to realize they could go up with them if they went to the right places. I would imagine there if something as simple as a parachute was heavily regulated, for example, that you can't even buy one or have one period without paying, like, I don't know, I'm just exaggerating, like $800 a year insurance based on another conversation, most people wouldn't even probably try that to kind of explore and create like different hobbies. So they then talk about safety. He says, the degree of safety in a paraglider is amazing, he said. They really take care of themselves. They are engineered so that if something goes wrong, which it does, I believe, because you can't predict the air, the thing sorts itself out. You really have to make it not fly for it not to fly. For me, in reading this, I'm not trying to say, for example, hey, paragliders, you're dangerous, like whatever, like a hobby's a hobby, I don't care. Like people are doing it safe, they should be able to do it. But it just makes me think if they say something like that is safe, because it is in many ways regulated by Transport Canada, I don't see how a guy flying a drone, for example, a 250-gram one, is more dangerous than something like this. Like a little toy, for example, flying up in the air that small compared to something with an actual human in it. I don't know, like to me it just doesn't make sense in that way. I always find examples like these are kind of important, not because necessarily you want to compare them directly like they're apples and apples, but it helps to open up people's minds where if you say something like that is okay, then why isn't this okay? Because sometimes it's just a matter of perception. Kind of makes me think of like languages, for example, where your native tongue, you might say it's really easy, and when you hear another language, like, hey, that's so complicated. Like for the Cantonese, for example, a lot of the words they change depending on the tone of it, and a lot of people, when you tell them that, they're like, that's ridiculous, that makes it so hard. Like for example, if you're saying a word, say, that's two different words. It sounds the same, but one of them is number 4 and another one is like die, kill, for example. Again, like there, most people will say, well, that's so confusing. There's like 6 different tones, 6 to 8 different tones. It can mean different words. I said that, well, English is the same thing too if you think about it. If I say, can I go buy a can of pop? Same spelling, kind of a different meaning, correct? And then afterwards when you tell people that, like, oh yeah, I never thought about it. So again, that's why I think examples like that are good for perspective, because everybody needs something different that they can relate to in order to open up their minds, in my opinion. And it's only better if there's more hobbies and more diversity, in my opinion. Alright, probably gotta wait for tomorrow to see if there's any progress in the Mavic shipping, but for now, let's try to find some older videos to have fun with. Alright, see you guys later.